Hello, everybody. WXVU Sports Director David Szczepanski coming to you live from a little bit of a different scene than normal for the Villanova football previews of the week. Usually I'm in the WXVU studio. Today I am on West Campus. Behind me here is the law school walking path that will take you back towards the Finneran Pavilion. And I think it's a really nice scene, right? You get to see the leaves falling down, what it looks like here on campus, and such a beautiful time of year. It really doesn't feel like fall. It's in the mid-70s. Actually, underneath this, I have a short sleeve shirt on. So, definitely some not completely fall-like weather. As I said yesterday, my basketball preview from Villanova Men's Basketball Media Day at the Finn. But nonetheless, it looks like fall. The leaves are falling, so I think it's a good place to film today's video as your Villanova Wildcats head down to Hampton, Virginia to take on the Hampton Pirates in this Saturday's CAA matchup. Villanova heading into this game, they are 6-2 overall in the season, 3-1 in CAA play, one game ahead of the Hampton Pirates, who are 5-3 overall this season. They are 2-2, so even at 500 in conference play this season. Villanova coming off of a nice 14-6 victory against New Hampshire this past Saturday in homecoming weekend at Villanova Stadium. 14-6, as Coach Ferrante said, it wasn't a perfect game. Villanova is still working on some things, but it was a nice way to bounce back after a really blowout loss, a tough, disappointing loss to Maine a couple weeks ago. So Villanova, they rebounded nicely, now look to put together a winning streak and make it 2 games in a row as they head down to Hampton, Virginia. So more about Hampton, as I said, they are 5-3 overall this season. They are 2-2 in CAA play. Their 2 losses, actually, they were 0-2 in their first 2 conference games of the season. They suffered a blowout loss to William & Mary, and then they suffered a very close loss that went to overtime against Rhode Island. Final score was in the mid-40s. So this was a shootout against Rhode Island, who is one of the best teams in the conference. They actually lead the CAA right now. So a tough team, tough loss there, but Hampton really battled against Rhode Island in that game. And then they have won their most 2 recent CAA games. They had a blowout win against NCA&T, which is one of the teams in the bottom of the conference. Right now, they're really struggling as they did last year. Last year was NCA&T's first year in the CAA, so this is their second season. They've struggled again here so far in conference play. And then their most recent victory was a 20-point win against Elon last weekend. So that was a blowout win for Hampton, but still they are 2-2, so 1 game behind Villanova. But Hampton, I think they're a sneaky team. They have been very underrated when you look at a lot of the preseason statistics for this Hampton team. I think they played pretty well. When you look at their offense, this offense averages around 35 points per game. They have 2 quarterbacks that have played in all 8 games this season. Their starting quarterback is technically Malcolm Mays. He has around 700 yards this season. A great touchdown to turnover ratio. 9 touchdowns this year for Mays, just 1 interception. And then their backup quarterback is Chris Zellis, who actually has more passing attempts this season than Malcolm Mays. He also has around 700 yards. But when you look at it, a little bit of an interception turnover issue for Zellis. He has 3 interceptions to 2 passing touchdowns this year. But both of those guys are averaging around 100 passing yards per game. Mays has only had 1 game this year where he's had more than 200 passing yards. That was in that game against Rhode Island, which was such a crazy shootout. So this passing attack is not the main aspect of this Hampton offense. Really, this is a team that likes to run the football, very similar to Villanova. So it's going to be very interesting to watch those 2 teams battle in the running game, the rushing attack, because they both do so at a very high level. When you look at it for Hampton, they have really 3 or 4 running backs that can get the job done at a high level, but especially Jaquan Snipes and Elijah Burris, both of those guys averaging a good amount of yards per game, but they both have around 500 rushing yards this season, including Snipes. He has 6 rushing touchdowns this year for the Hampton Pirates. So they like to run the football. 23 rushing touchdowns is crazy. I mean, Villanova, they are in the mid-teens in rushing touchdowns, and they have had such a great season, right? You think about how much success David Abbott, Isaiah Ragland has had, and Isaiah Ragland, speaking of Ragland, he was in the game this past week. He missed 2 consecutive games for Villanova. He played this past weekend against New Hampshire, so great to have him back. He is expected to play in this game against Hampton as well. So always great to get back more aspects of this Villanova team. And the Wildcats are getting healthier, right? Connor Watkins had a little bit of an ankle injury a couple weeks ago against Stony Brook, and he looked much better running the football the other day for Villanova against New Hampshire. And then, of course, Villanova also getting Isaiah Ragland back last week against the other Wildcats, the New Hampshire Wildcats. So really great to see the Wildcats getting healthier as we head toward this final stretch. Some more about Hampton. Their defense is also pretty solid. It's in the middle of the CA in a lot of categories. They give up about 25, 26 points per game. But Villanova, I think they'll have an easier time to score against this Hampton defense, of course, than they did last week against New Hampshire, who was really one of the best defenses in the CA in many categories, especially in sacks and getting pressure to the quarterback. But this Hampton team and this Hampton defense is definitely capable of putting pressure on Connor Watkins and really limiting this Villanova offense. So I think the Wildcats offense will have to be ready. I'm excited to see how they respond and kind of build off of that win against New Hampshire this past weekend. But we know that Villanova is a team that plays much better at home. They've won 13 consecutive games at Villanova Stadium. So going on the road to Hampton, Virginia will definitely, be a factor in this game for Villanova, how they respond to a road test, especially after a tough loss against Maine a few weeks ago. So Villanova, too, as I talked about earlier, Hampton has two different quarterbacks that have played in all-out games. They have a really good rushing attack. They're going to have to be, Villanova is going to have to be ready for a lot of different aspects to this Hampton game. I mean, they're going to try to trick Villanova, provide them with some different looks that maybe even Hampton hasn't shown other teams yet this season. So Villanova, maybe they don't have it on film. So the Wildcats will have to get ready for a big test this weekend against Hampton. As I said, even though Hampton, may not be in the top of the CA in a lot of standings, I think they're a very underrated team. They play tough games. They have an offense that can score and compete at a high level, even against Rhode Island, who is, the best team in the CA when you look at records right now. So Villanova will have to be ready. This game will be on Saturday at 1 p.m. in Hampton, Virginia. WXVU will not have any radio coverage, but I will have coverage for you on my social media, my Instagram, my YouTube, as well as my Twitter or X account. And I'll be doing a keys to the game video after this, so I'll post that as well. So stay tuned for much more action, everybody. And as always, go Cats!